All right, the time is now 7 o'clock. I'd like to call the meeting to order. If you could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Ms. Pollier.
I pledge the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you very much. Clerk, please call the roll.
Greenberg.
Here.
Hicks is absent. Mako.
Here.
Pollier. Here. Chapaka.
Here.
Soriano.
Here.
Tamarkin.
Here.
Okay, do we have any additions or corrections to the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the approval of minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the October 23rd, 2024 movie?
So moved.
Have a motion by Ms. Pollier. Do I have a second?
Second, Chapaka.
Have a second by Mr. Chapaka. Any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Pollier.
Yes.
Chapaka.
Yes.
Mako.
Yes.
Soriano.
Yes.
Tamarkin.
Yes.
Greenberg.
Abstain.
Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is going to be the swearing in of applicants and speakers, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Roth for that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are now at the public hearing portion of the meeting. The public hearing will operate as follows. Administrative staff will make a presentation or comment on the application. The applicant or their representative may then make a presentation or comment on the application. The applicant has 10 minutes to present, and additional time may be requested. Permission is at the discretion of the chair. Public comment will then be open for 3 minutes allowed per speaker. Additional time may be requested. Permission is at the discretion of the chair. Speakers must complete a speaker slip and come to the podium and state their name and address. The applicant will then be given 10 minutes to comment. Additional time may be requested. Permission is at the discretion of the chair. If there is more than one application pending for a particular address, the presentation on each application may be consolidated and presented as one. At this time, will persons wishing to present testimony this evening please rise and raise your right hand to be sworn in? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, state I do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roth. We'll now begin the applications and public comment section. I will read the first item into the record, and the first item is going to be a variance application. It is case V-0027-2024 to consider a variance application to vary section 1103.09E, development standards of the codified ordinances of the city of Gahanna for property located at 494 Denwood Drive North, parcel ID 025-003016, current zoning R3, small lot residential. Tony Todardo, applicant. And I will turn it over to Mr. Blackford for a presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Michael Blackford, Director of Planning, filling in for Matty Kapka tonight on the 3 items. As you stated, this is a variance request. It's to allow an accessory detached structure to be placed into 2 rear yards. That would be the north and the west side of the property. On the screen right now, that is the location and zoning map. McCutcheon Road is the road towards the north of that screen there. Just to the right-hand side, just off of to the east there is Stigler Road. This site is a corner lot. It's at the corner of Lancewood and Denwood Drive. So again, it's a detached accessory structure. It's a gazebo. They would like it 1 foot from the north property line and the west property line. Zoning code would say both of those are rear yards. We did amend the code back in 2023. So the zoning code's been around for about 65 years. In 2023, we amended the accessory structure setback from 10 feet down to 5 feet. This is the shortest distance that we've had in the 65 years of zoning. So again, in this zoning and similar zonings, it was historically a 10-foot setback. We had lengthy discussions, myself, Planning Commission, Council, on accessory structure setbacks, and it was determined that 5 feet was the shortest distance that was appropriate in the city, given without a variance request. The gazebo is just under 200 square feet. It's just over 10 feet tall. Size, height, that meets code. Again, it's just the placement of the structure. This is a code enforcement action. There was not a building permit. Here is the site plan. Again, top of the screen here. Top left, this is the location where they installed the gazebo, 1 foot from the north property line and the west property line. Lovely picture of the gazebo. It's about 12 feet by 16 feet, 10.5 feet tall. Code section, small lot residential. Again, the setback is 5 feet. That was changed less than 2 years ago, and they're requesting 1 foot. Variance criteria, I'm not going to go through all these. One, I would point out 2 of them. The first one, the top one there, the variance is not likely to result in substantial damage to the essential character of the neighborhood. This particular subdivision is one of the older subdivisions in Gahanna. I believe, looking at it, the homes in this area were built in the 60s. You'll probably find that in the older subdivisions throughout Gahanna that you're going to find probably detached accessory structures like sheds and garages that might be of a similar setback. Can't confirm that, but if we're looking at aerials, again, because of the age of the particular subdivision, there probably is some inconsistencies with today's zoning code for structures. The other one I would point out is the variance is one that we don't usually talk about, but I'll talk about very briefly. The variance is not likely to result in environmental impacts greater than what is typical for lots in the neighborhood. One of the things that the Department of Planning deals with a lot, but not necessarily with Planning Commission, more behind the scenes, is from a code enforcement standpoint. One of the issues that code enforcement and our friends over in the engineering department deal a lot with is drainage in these older subdivisions. One reason that we have setbacks for structures, one is so you're not encroaching too much on your neighbors, and another reason, especially when you have a structure such as this that has a roof, is that the closer that gets to a property line, the more likely you're going to have runoff associated with that goes into neighboring properties. This was reviewed by our engineering department. They don't have any concerns. They didn't make a comment about drainage, but I will just share that that's something that we deal with behind the scenes quite a bit, is after the fact, dealing with drainage impacts from structures, or quite honestly, the perceived impacts that they have on drainage and drainage flow. They're not always the result of a structure. But again, want to point that out, that in these older subdivisions, the drainage is not as good as in the newer subdivisions. And again, when we're placing structures near property lines, that increases the likelihood, doesn't guarantee it, but increases the likelihood of code enforcement related issues. Staff, we do not support this request. Again, the code used to be 10 feet. That was modified down to 5 feet after lengthy conversations. 1 foot, it's on 2 separate property lines, so not one property line, but 2. There are no unique circumstances with this particular lot in staff's opinion. And again, unique circumstances, typically that would be topography, unique lot shape. This is a rectangular lot. The R3 zoning designation requires a 6,000 square foot minimum lot size. This particular lot's about 8,700 square feet, so it's about 45% larger than what the code would require. Usually the larger the lot, the easier it is to meet setbacks. So again, there's nothing unique from staff's standpoint about the lot, or that would necessitate the variance request. For that, Mr. Chair, turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Blackford. We'll now open up to public comment. Would the applicant care to speak? If you could state your name, address, and relationship to the project.
Absolutely. Can you guys
floor.
hear me okay, Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Excellent. My name is Tony Tadero. I live at 494 Denwood Drive North, and that is a pretty good picture of my gazebo in the backyard. First and foremost, I thank you for your time tonight. I know it's late evening, big happenings yesterday around town. A lot of people are fatigued from voting and all that goes with that. So thank you. I guess first and foremost, I'm a father of 3 as of 12 days ago. I just had my 3rd. And while I love my neighborhood, it's not the safest neighborhood in the world. Crime-wise, we're okay, but people are careless on the road. They speed through at the night. People don't maintain their sidewalks wherever you want to go in that neighborhood. As you said, it's a subdivision from the 60s. My house in particular, I believe, is 1965. If you look at old aerial photographs from the 50s, it's just a cornfield. So a lot has changed in 60 years. Obviously, zoning requirements have changed as well, and the times and availability of purchases with them. In my particular example, I purchased this gazebo and basically as a means of trying to create a safe space for my family to play and gather. I am on a corner lot. I believe you said it was 45% larger than your average lot. Problem with the corner lot, you can't use the side yard. Can't do anything with it. It's just there. I can't do anything. I can't build anything. I can't direct anything. I can put a small fence out there, which I've done, but I can't necessarily put a gazebo out there. It's a structure that would be in violation of some code I don't really know, but I know it exists. Hence the reason that it's in the backyard. I do have a structure in my backyard already. It is a garage built before my time in the wonderful 1970s. And while it serves its purpose for additional parking and storage of fun things like toys and nonsense I can't necessarily keep in my 1,400 square foot house, it doesn't leave me a lot of space to do other things with my backyard. This group did allow me to create or erect a fence rather several years ago up against the property line. And I believe at the time, I'm not sure if this has changed, please correct me if I'm wrong, but there was no permit required for pouring a concrete pad, which has since been poured into that corner. The whole purpose of that was to hopefully have a gazebo or a gathering space of some variety with a cover. I'm one of the lucky few in my neighborhood to have a sweet gumball tree, and if any of you know what that is, they're a little bit painful when you step on them. So to have some coverage from that instead of them hitting you in the head is a blessing. And now I realize that my gazebo is pushed into the corner. As a normal citizen, I don't really see the issue of having something within your property lines that is not obstructing your neighbor. It's not hanging over the edge. With relation to drainage, we don't have any drainage issues. My neighbors don't have any drainage issues. I've yet to see one since living there in 2017. We don't really have floods. I'm happy to purchase a gutter system for it. Costco sells one for $700. I'll put it on there tomorrow, just to comply. But I guess what I'm getting at really is I don't see what this violates. Of course, there is a setback, but if I can put a fence there and if I can put a concrete pad there, why can I not put something vertical there? This is no higher than a building that's already on my property, that being the detached garage. It's not an eyesore. It's, not something that you would look at and be like, oh gosh, what is that doing there? It's just something to help us in the backyard, cover some patio furniture, let my toddlers play and run around, hang out in the summertime, maybe eat some marshmallows after, roast them on the chimney, whatever. But to put that 5 feet off of each property line kind of diminishes the purpose of that concrete pad. I would then just have a corridor of unused space that I can't do anything with. I can store things on it. I don't really see a purpose in doing that because now that you just have junk piled up against the fence line, which I already enjoy that courtesy of one of my neighbors. And if anything, I would argue that that is probably more permanent than this gazebo. This gazebo is meant to be bolted down to that concrete. It currently is not. And I had done that purposely because I had anticipated that there might be a request to move it. My argument is this, basically, and I'll summarize and let you all get back to it. I am happy to move this if it ever came to be that it would be required to be moved for easements, I guess utility purposes or what have you. I do not have an electrical pole that is in my backyard. We are beneath lines. There are electrical poles at the right and left-hand side of my property. There is no water line beneath there. We did have people mark utilities prior to doing all of this. But if it ever came to be that I had to move it, I got 4 people at a moment's notice ready to move. One is here right with me right now, my neighbor Tim, who shares a property line with me, effectively catty corner. It takes 20 minutes to move. Everyone picks up a post and we can get it done. And I will do that at my own expense. If that concrete pad had to be busted up for whatever reason to get the drainage or piping, I'll do it. Again, I'm just a father of 3 trying to create a safe space for my kids to play in and a nice place to gather because, right now in our neighborhood, again, people are speeding. I can't really take them out into the front yard. They wander onto the sidewalk. People block the sidewalks with their vehicles. They park them all the time. We have a blind woman in our neighborhood, for example, that constantly has to go out into the road. And it's quite nerve-wracking to watch her do it on a daily basis as I'm eating breakfast. I'm just waiting for the worst to happen, and I hope it never does. But to do that with 3 kids is also kind of terrifying. You're coming around a car in the road. People are speeding. What's going to happen next? I'd rather stay in my yard if it's all the same. And this helps me do that. So, but with that, I have nothing additional to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. I do not believe we had any speaker forms, so we will close public comment, and we'll open it up to the commission for questions. Starting on my left, Mr. Chapaka.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sophia, did anybody call or leave any kind of comment whatsoever, adjoining neighbors?
No, I did not receive any comments.
Mr. Blackford, if this is approved, or wherever it goes, does this structure require a building permit to anchor it?
It's going to require a permit.
It will require a permit to get it done. So currently, there is no permit.
I don't know if one's been filed, but there's not an approved permit.
Okay. Tony, can you have the microphone again, please?
Yes, sir.
So this isn't a Photoshop picture, this is a real picture of the backyard?
That's not my backyard. I wish it looked that good. That's just off the Costco website.
That's what I was wondering.
Okay. So I was going to have some questions on, well, the clarity of the picture, so it looked like it was Photoshop.
It's pretty good weather for Gahanna, I gotta say.
Yeah.
I mean, I will happily provide a photo for you if need be. I don't have one really on my person. I wasn't sure if an actual photo was necessary. They just requested a photo of the structure. And I figured the most unobstructed version of this is the product.
So is the relationship to the pavilion pretty consistent with the pad that's there?
Yes,
Or is
sir.
your pad bigger, or is it the same?
It's a little bit bigger, so I don't know if you're able to pull up the satellite photo of my home again. It's kind of better to describe it. So the lighter gray square in the north there, that is the detached garage. And when I bought the house, someone had pulled into the back side of that garage and knocked out the back wall. Part of my purchasing of the home on an FHA loan was to repair that. So what I had done is basically put another garage door in the back of that, so I kind of have a drive-through garage, if that makes sense. The grand vision was to create a pad from that detached garage over to the corner, which I have done. So it is effectively extended from that garage to that corner, the gazebo then sitting in the corner that it is in.
How do you use the space in between the gazebo and the existing garage?
Effectively just walking inside the garage, grabbing a power wheel or a basketball hoop for the kids, whatever it might be. So that door typically stays open, and we can kind of use it almost like a breezeway, if you will, in older homes. It's not covered or anything, but, so you got garage space and then gazebo.
So you built a pad a little while ago, and then you put a gazebo on it now. So is there a reason, just design-wise, why you wouldn't have rotated that 90 degrees so that it kind of gave you a face out towards the yard instead of having a little odd space to the left? If you were allowed to do the 5 or even the 1 foot, was that ever a consideration when you did the pad, or
In terms of putting it closer to the house,
just
you're asking?
rotating it?
So if I were to rotate it closer to the house, does that make sure I'm understanding and moving that structure south?
No, just keep it where it's at, but keep it in the corner, but just rotate it 90 degrees so that the long way faces the yard instead of the garage side?
Doing it that, I tried to avoid having kind of one continuous structure. Extra long garage didn't really seem aesthetically pleasing to me. I've got a neighbor right now that kind of does that with a temporary gazebo. They've extended their garage out with some stuff that you'd use at a barbecue. Doesn't look too great. Didn't really want to do that with a permanent structure. And the way that I figured it was to have it separated from that. I can put a grill maybe in between. I have it on the second patio that's kind of attached to the house originally. I don't use just because it's in the middle of the yard. But the idea there was to put a grill or something there, allowing it to vent up and out instead of in the structure.
You mentioned the property or whatever, it gets to be in a corner lot, it's pretty busy. Do you have a fence, enclosed yard at all, or is it just a fence?
I do. It is an enclosed yard. When I moved in, it was a chain link fence in disrepair. I've replaced that with 6 foot all the way around. And then in the side yard, we did, I think it's like a 45 inches is what you guys allow.
So there's a 6-foot wood fence in the back corner
That's correct.
on that?
Basically from the middle of the house on the left-hand side out to the property line all the way back and then to the upper right-hand portion of the detached garage.
So that photo pretty was deceiving, because you have,
But again, not intentional. They just asked for a product photo, so.
so the neighbors can't see when you're enjoying your space because of the fence is there.
That's correct.
Uh,
It's by design, if I may.
Thank you, that's all the questions I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chapaka. Ms. Pollier.
Thank you. Do you want to come back up? You probably just stay up here until we're all done asking
Okay, I'll
questions.
do that.
But my first question actually is for the administration. Are there any easements anywhere on this property that would be that this concrete pad would encroach upon?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, that's what I just couldn't tell because there was no survey in here that showed any of that. How much space is between, like, as far as feet, between your garage and the side of the concrete pad that it's closest to? Like, how many feet approximately are there?
The concrete side closest, I'm
To the
sorry.
garage, like the space between where your garage is and
So
between where the gazebo is and where the garage is?
It's effectively one pad. It's connected to the garage at this point.
Oh, it's one, okay.
Yeah, because
it's
we
one
had that
pad.
second garage door installed on the back end of it. Instead of repairing it with cinder block, I was like, let's just open it up, make a breezeway sort of thing. Some people enjoy those
Sorry,
screens on the
wasn't
garage doors, for
understanding that.
example. I had that idea. So that pad is up against that garage.
Okay, so could that, trying to think, is there any way that this gazebo could potentially be moved to?
And it's easy to move. 4 people pick up a post each, done. We've done it.
Okay, so then why can't you just do that?
I don't want one continuous structure.
Okay,
I mean, looking at it, you just have one extra long garage. I don't think it really looks great. You're just walking out now into an enclosed space. But failing that, you'd also just, again, kind of be wasting the corner of a patio. It's tucked away in a corner because it's a corner. Corners are great. Sit in them, you're comfortable in them, et cetera. If you move it closer to the garage, now you just have a big open space for stuff to collect. In my case, it would be sweet gum balls, various leaves, whatever else is going to fall into that space. The way that the sun hits it in the middle of the day, for example, because we're on east-west, that would just be sun all day, limiting the use of the patio. Not that I could use it, a little bit of sun, a little pale, but
okay. When you put this pad in, was it with the intention of this gazebo being constructed upon it in the
absolutely
future?
was, yeah. Or some sort of covering in general.
Okay. Did you do any research into the city code at that point in time as to what you wanted to put there and what the requirements might be as far as setbacks go?
I had tried, but in all honesty, it's not easy to navigate for someone who's simply unfamiliar with the stuff. I mean, and some of the stuff that I tried to give you guys in the variant statement, I tried to attach some city code, but I don't know what I'm looking at. I don't know how to reference the stuff correctly for you guys. I got some general numbers in there hoping for the best, but to the untrained eye, it may as well be gibberish for the most part. So trying to understand it as best I can. I tried to stay within the guidelines, but in my opinion, it was me trying to erect something that was aesthetically pleasing. Neighbors wouldn't mind too much, given what our neighborhood looks like on a given day. I thought it was an improvement.
Okay. I don't have any further questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Pollier. Mr. Greenberg?
Yes, I guess a couple questions, Mr. Tadero. And it might be for Mr. Blackford as well. You could get your 4 friends, pick it up, move it over 4 feet and down 4 feet, and you'd be in complete compliance, wouldn't need a variance,
Correct.
right? Is that correct, Mr. Blackford?
We'd need a site plan that shows, if it's 5 feet.
Right. So if it got to 5 feet on both sides, you'd be in compliance. And you said you were willing to do that.
If need be, in terms of they had to address utilities or something like that. I understand that, I could simply move it and be out of the issue. I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have paid the money I paid to be here tonight. The point of me being here is to try to keep it exactly where it is because I believe it maximizes our space.
But your concern is that if you moved it closer by 4 feet, your garage, it would be one structure?
Well, if I were to rotate it, as suggested earlier, 90 degrees, keep it long against the back of the property, if you will, moving it closer to that, I would be 5 feet off of the back of the patio. I mean, there's already an easement there, for example, on the back side of the garage. You can't see, obviously, but there's that 5 feet of gap, if you will, there existing today. If I were to do that with the concrete pad, keep that off of there by 5 feet, it's just going to be unused space. I don't think it's a wise use of space in this particular example.
So again, Mr. Blackford, so if they give you a site plan and they moved it to 5 feet away from the property lines, they'd be in compliance, wouldn't need a variance.
Correct, yes, sir.
Do they need anything else for a gazebo?
Well, it's, I believe, based on the size, it being less than 200 square feet, it's a zoning certificate, which is like a step below a building permit and that, so it's fairly straightforward request if it meets code.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
thank you, that's it, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Greenberg. Mr. Soriano?
So I'm trying to mentally picture what this situation is in the backyard. And I was going into Google Street View here, and so you have at the northeast part of your property, a garage, a detached garage, correct? And then some space along the back property line. So that garage is abutting the northeast part of your property line, and it is on the property line, I'm guessing. West of the back of the garage, there's some space, right? And then the gazebo starts.
Correct.
And then there's the fence 1 foot away at top and bottom.
Correct.
Approximately how much space is right now between the garage and the gazebo?
Maybe 8 or 10 feet perhaps, I don't know. I don't know if Mr. Blackford would mind, you could pull it up on Google Maps and show you a better visual, at least from the street. You could see that side of the structure a little bit easier. You can see it creeping over the fence a little bit there in that corner.
Okay, yeah, I'm on
If you're
this,
able to cast, I'm not sure what you guys use there.
I'm on Google Street View, I can't see it, but,
It's all pretty blocked by a tree.
yeah, you have a big tree, the big tree back there. So, the pad, I'm also trying to understand, was the pad there previously, the concrete pad, like when you bought the house, or did you install the pad?
I installed that pad.
Okay, and it was really extended from the garage, or the existing level of the garage, and it just kind of went west to your property line? A question for the city, Mr. Blackford, is there a permit required to pour a concrete slab up to the property line?
Like the applicant stated, especially depending on when this was done, I can confirm that Department of Planning doesn't have any permitting requirements, and I don't believe that any of the other departments would have had a requirement. I would say now, today, we have a little bit more requirements where those pads can and can't be. Like they're no longer allowed to be adjacent, right on a property line.
Sure. Mr. Dodaro, is the pad up against the fence? Before you answer that, part of the reason I think that there's, some of these setbacks are in place is, being able to navigate between, I think when I installed a shed a long time ago, ended up having to move it off the property line. But it's basically to be able to get and maneuver around the shed if there wasn't, I know there's not an easement, but, to cut grass or, to be able to work around it. Is there anything like between the concrete pad and the fence that would allow like growth or just inhibit being able to move around it?
No, it's probably off the fence line by about 2 inches maybe, if I had to take a guess. I don't have it in front of me. From the post, that is. I mean, from the actual, the fence slats itself, maybe 8 to 10 inches. But yeah, in terms of things growing right there, I filled up that gap with gravel just to keep things down. There's no weeds growing up and out of it. It's up against my neighbor, Gene and Alan Scherer's property. They've got their garden up against it. It works out. So everyone
Got
is
it.
able to access what they need to access, and my gate's not locked. So.
Okay. And then how much distance on the south side of the gazebo, and we already talked about the 8 to 10 feet on the east side of the gazebo, how much space on the pad is there to the south of the gazebo?
It's basically, the pad was poured with the intention of buying that specific gazebo, so it's about the same size. So I believe on the pad itself, maybe 4 or 5 inches this way to the north, 4 or 5 inches off the south of it.
Okay.
So it's to size. Again, with intention, that was
Sure.
the original
So
idea.
moving the gazebo south would ostensibly pull it off of the concrete pad?
Correct, it would be then into the grass, and there's a sweet gum ball tree right there, maybe 6 or 7 feet off that concrete pad.
Okay. Got it. Okay, those are my questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Soriano. Mr. Tamarkin?
I'd just like to follow up on Mr. Serrano's questions, just for me to understand. Your current pad goes all the way from the garage to the fence,
That's correct.
and it then goes on the back from the fence, really just to the end of the gazebo.
Correct.
So that's the length. So if we asked you to move it, you can move it closer to the garage and get, you're 5 feet, understanding that you'd have some wasted space, wouldn't be happy with that. But to get it from 5 feet from the back property line, which, a little disoriented here, but I assume that's to the north, you'd have to rotate it 90 degrees to come off, or else, as Mr. Ciano just said, 2 of the legs would be off the pad, or you'd have to pour more concrete, and now you're getting into some trees. More money, more tree, more money, and you're getting into trees.
Correct.
Okay. All right, I think that's all the questions I have.
I mean, if you guys are really liking it, I could try my best to find a picture in my phone. I haven't specifically taken one to be like, behold, but I'm sure I've got one somewhere. But I'm not sure if you have the time for me to find it. I could show it later, but it's entirely up to you.
I think I have a clarity on what's going on there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Markin. And I have just a few questions. So when did you install the pad, the concrete pad? Ballpark? 2.5, 3 years ago, maybe. Okay.
At the time, I did call in requesting, is a permit needed? Told no.
Okay, and then the gazebo was installed when?
About 1.5 years ago.
And,
2, actually, sorry.
okay. And Mr. Blackford, when were the current standards, setback standards, put into the zoning code?
The 5-foot accessory structure was in March of '23 is when that was in place. And then the, just to clarify, as the applicant stated, 3 years ago, definitely no permit would have been necessary for a concrete pad, and that pad could have been poured right up to the property line. So that is 100% allowed by code and everything.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I had. Okay, any additional questions from the commission?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I wanted to follow up on something that Mr. Sariano brought up, and just with the application that we have, what is the ballpark number or dimension from the garage to the north fence?
Garage to the north fence?
Yeah.
Maybe 6 feet, 5, 6 feet-ish.
So there's 6 feet from the garage to the north fence, so you can walk around there with equipment and a lawnmower behind that?
Yeah. Bunch of weeds and nonsense back there, but.
So
yeah.
does the gazebo align with the back of the garage?
It would if we were to rotate it, but again, that wasn't our intention.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Shpaka. Ms. Polly?
No, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Mr. Greenberg?
No.
Mr. Arnold? Okay, I don't have anything additional. So with that, do we have a motion to approve the variance, or item V-0027-2024?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I move that V-0027-2024 for approval.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Greenberg. Do we have a second?
Second, Shipaka?
Second by Mr. Shpaka. Any discussion on the motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I'm, with all these things, and it seems kind of odd that we would be talking about your gazebo and fence line. But the code's pretty clear that we used to be 10 feet. We run into this a lot, so we adjusted it to 5. Never was it ever considered it would be 1 foot. But having a 6-foot privacy fence, having your neighbors not complaining, it is a good-looking gazebo. Being open, if it was an enclosed structure, I would be strongly opposed because it is 1 foot away. It does collect garbage and leaves and sticks and critters. You can't get to it, beat it out. But since it is an open structure, a little bit more sympathetic to condition that you have, and I will be voting in favor.
Thank you, Mr. Shpaka. Ms. Polly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's from that picture that I can see right there, it's a beautiful gazebo. It looks like a very nice place to have family events and spend time outside and grilling and whatnot. And I appreciate the thought that you put into how you wanted your backyard to look with the continuous pad and whatnot. I do appreciate all that, and I understand where you're coming from. However, I also believe that the zoning code is there for a reason, and in my opinion, I think that it needs to be followed the way that it is laid out, and we have these setback rules for a reason. I personally am in favor of uniformly applying the zoning code as much as I possibly can. So I'm going to agree with the administration on this one. I don't think that there's really any specific unique circumstances that would necessitate this variance. I get that this was the easiest location to install it and for you and what you would want to do with your backyard, and I do appreciate that. But I will be voting against this application tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Pollier. Mr. Greenberg?
Yes, I echo those comments. I think that there's a reason for our code and the reason for the setbacks, and actually the setbacks were reduced with the last update of the code from 10 to 5 feet, and with the fact that you indicated that you could move that gazebo tonight if you had 4 people, and I also will not be in favor.
Thank you, Mr. Greenberg. Mr. Serrano?
I tend to agree with Mr. Chapaka. I think if this gazebo were an enclosed shed or something of the like, I would have a different opinion. But given that this is an open structure that has no foundation, that's easily movable, there's also really nothing, not that Mr. Todaro would do this, but from the homeowner moving it 5 feet and then moving it back. I mean, it's essentially an easy up, that you can move. So while I agree that the zoning code is in place for a reason, we have these variances, or we have these setbacks in place for a reason, I do think with this type of structure, it seems different, given that it's not enclosed. I would also say that if we look at the variance criteria, I don't think it's substantially changing the character of the neighborhood. It's not damaging adjoining properties. It's not affecting delivery of governmental services. It's not resulting in environmental impacts. I think it is a more economical use of the backyard and the property, and I don't believe it undermines the objectives of the land use plan, so I'm going to be in favor of the variance.
Thank you, Mr. Serrano. Mr. Tamarkin?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with that also. I'll be in favor, I think. I think the zoning code is important to follow, but in this case, it's an exception where the fence is there, kind of demarks the property line, and whether it's moved 5 feet or 1 foot, I don't think it's going to have a whole big bearing, with it. So I will vote in favor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tamarkin. I'm actually going to be agreeing with Ms. Pauly and Mr. Greenberg about denying this variance. Again, I think that their arguments, I agree wholeheartedly. And I also agree with what staff pointed out. I think that we would be setting a very bad precedent if we did approve this. I know it's not ideal for you as a homeowner. I get it, I'm a homeowner. But, the code is there, and I think that we have to be strict in this case. So I will also be voting no. So with that, clerk, please call the roll.
Greenberg,
No.
Chapaka,
Yeah.
Mako,
No.
Pollier,
No.
Suriano,
Yes.
Tamarkin.
Yes.
So we have a 3-3 vote, and because of that, the motion will not pass.
Just a question, if I may.
Certainly.
In the event of time, do I need to resubmit the variance to try again? I'm not familiar with these processes and proceedings, just trying to understand.
Right. So again, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think I see two things that can be done. One, get in compliance with the code, or two, if you disagree with the motion that we've taken tonight, you can always appeal our ruling. So those would be your two options.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, The next variance case we have, I'll read it into the record. We have case V-0028-2024 to consider a variance application to vary section 1103.07E, maximum height of a structure of the codified ordinances of the city of Gahanna for property located at 400 Bramer Court, parcel ID 025-011408, current zoning R1, large lot residential. Corey Shu, applicant. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Blackford for a presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our next agenda item is a variance request. Property there, everything in yellow is R1, that's our large lot, residential zoning classification. The lot here that you in question and all the lots around it here, this is part of the Academy Ridge subdivision, Hamilton Roads, just off the screen to the right, and Columbus Academy would be just up here to the north. Variance request, pool house. So we have an accessory structure variance request. This time it's not to the setback, but rather the structure height. It is a 500+ square foot pool house. It is 17 feet in height. 15 feet is what's allowed by code for accessory structures. Doing a little bit of research into the history of the code this afternoon, and from what I can tell, 15 feet has pretty much always been the standard for accessory structure height. So it's not a change from the new code or the old code, it's just always been the standard. If this site looked familiar to you, your memory is better than mine. I did not remember this variance request from 2022, but they did have a pool house setback reduction approved from 10 feet down to 7 feet. But again, this case, they can place a structure, essentially meets setbacks. It's 9.9 feet instead of 10 feet. But it's 2 feet taller than what the code would allow. And if you're looking at Google Street Maps on this one, you can actually see the property in that, unlike the last request. So I think we're going to look at that here right after we look at this site plan. I know the applicant was kind enough to include some pictures in that. Again, site plan here in red is the approximate location of the pavilion. Blue is a fence. It is not a 6 foot tall privacy fence. It is a 4.5 foot tall a fence that they have. And here is a street view image. Again, I think those trees are to the rear of the property. And again, this would kind of be in a similar location as the last one, sort of at the extension of the driveway. So again, it's not the location, it's not the design of the structure, but it is the structure height. Again, 15 feet is what code allows, 17 feet is what's being requested. And that 15 feet, it's a large lot residential zoning classification, but all of our residential zonings allow for 15 feet. Same variance criteria as the last request. Again, there's no open comments from staff, so it doesn't look like this interferes with easements or would disrupt any governmental services, anything of that nature. Staff's recommendation, again, sort of like with the last one, we would recommend disapproval of this request. Again, a lot of it has to do with no special circumstances necessitating a variance. That's essentially what variances are supposed to be. Again, something unique with the property, the topography, or the property shape. So Maddie wrote this PowerPoint. Staff is unaware of other structures over 15 feet in the area. Obviously, that would be accessory structures. I did look at variance history, and we did have a variance approved. I could find one in 2018, and it was in Harrison Pond, and it was for a detached garage to increase structure height from 15 feet to 20 feet. That particular lot was adjacent to a preserve area, so where that garage was located essentially would have basically no visual impacts. And Harrison Pond, part of that research, it looked like there was a number of detached garages that were over 15 feet in height. This subdivision, it's not nearly as old as the first subdivision, but again, staff isn't aware of any detached structures over 15 feet in height. Doesn't mean there aren't any that exist. But again, there's no variances approved in this particular area. The 4-foot fence that we saw from the street view image here, again, it's doesn't provide the same type of screening as a 6-foot fence in that would provide. But with all that said, staff would say that, 2 feet is relatively minor. That's almost what could be approved in the code through an administrative deviation. We could approve 16 and a half feet administratively. So it is just a little bit more than what code would allow. And they did submit a permit, and this was discovered as part of the permit review. This has not already been installed. And with that, Mr. Chair, I would turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Blackford. Would the applicant like to comment?
I'm the homeowner. I'm John.
Okay. Again, if you could state your name and address in association with the project, and just speak into the microphone and give it the floor.
Yep. John Esterby, 400 Bramer Court, Gahanna, Ohio, 43230, and I'm the owner. Requesting a variance, if you see the picture, there's not much that's going to be over 17 feet. It's an angled back roof. I do have those tall trees, and there's more tall trees out throughout my yard. So behind the house, there's 3 huge pines that basically screen the neighbor from being able to see each other's house. And then if you look to the right, there are 3 or 5 tall arborvores that are 20 feet tall. So putting this structure here will not impede people being able to see, because they can't see now. And the main reason for the height is to get the clearance of the top beam here high enough so that when the sun comes over the trees, you can still get some sun in front of the pergola, because the entrance to the pool, if you can go back to the other
One of these images. Something like this that shows
the entrance to the pool is right in front of the pergola. So the steps to get in the pool are right in front of the pergola. So a lot of people like to sit there to sun. So if the structure's low and the trees are high, it will take longer for the sun to get over the trees, and there won't be enough space to enjoy the front entrance of the pool. That's really all I have.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. Again, don't believe we received any,
No, we did not. For public comment, you mean?
yes.
We have nothing for public comment. He's one of the applicants.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, very good. Okay, so seeing no public comment, we'll now close the public comment, and we'll open up to the commission for questions, starting with Mr. Shabaka.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a wonderful little picture. I don't know who draws people in those pictures, but that looks like that thing is 35 feet tall, based upon the images of the children that are there.
The dog. Did you see the dog?
And the dog.
See the dog? That's the best.
So I'm 17 feet to the peak of the monopitch at the top.
Yep.
That's what we're talking about. Is the slope, the monopitch there, the dominating one, is that complementary to the house? Is it the same pitch as the house?
No, that neighborhood has very steep roofs. It is complementary from the wood structure. We have cedar paneling, and the metal roof matches the house.
So the back wall is the same as the house?
Yeah, in texture.
Thank you very much for getting a permit. Good job. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Shabaka. Ms. Polly?
I also want to say thank you for filing for a permit as well. Now, is this like a house, or not a house, but like, is there, I mean, it just kind of, from the picture there, it just kind of looks like some kind of a pergola. Is there anything, because you called it a pool house, so can you just explain what that is?
It really is just a pergola. It's,
Okay. That's all it is, a
It does
pergola
have storage
that,
in the back for all the pool things. That's what that little 2-foot section is.
oh, so it's just storage?
Yeah.
Okay. My other question is, the 17 feet, is that at the very top there of that, like,
Yeah, that very top.
That's
point
the
bridge.
17 feet,
Yep, that's where
right?
the mouse is, yeah.
okay. Okay, I don't have any other questions, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Polly. Mr. Greenberg.
No questions.
Thank you, Mr. Greenberg. Mr. Siriano?
Just one question. It looks like for the two pitches that are there, you have the kind of mono pitch at the top, and then you have the pitch in front. Is that impacting the sun getting to the deck in terms of allowing that sun
If
in?
it wasn't there, it would have been it's just a change. I saw it actually at the Home and Garden Show, that 2-pitch look.
Yeah.
And I really liked it. It is at the front of where the structure was supposed to be. So if it wasn't that design, it would have been a teepee roof, and the roof would have been in the same
Gotcha.
spot.
Okay, thank you. No questions.
Thank you, Mr. Siriano. Mr. Tamarkin?
Yeah, so we said we couldn't do the 17, we had to go to 15. You drop the roof down, you either reduce the angle or take 2 feet off until you're at the.
One problem is, yeah, it's already made. So I think when we submitted before for this 16 and a half, you just lowered it. You just cut the legs off, I think, right?
Yeah, right now, in the current total elevation, the bottom of the lowest beam,
If you could come up and speak, please.
and I have this in 3D CAD if anyone does need to see any details.
And if you could, speak in there, and again, give your name and address, please.
My name is Corey Shu with Cedar and Stone, 3345 West Jefferson, Caiusville Road, West Jeff, Ohio. What I was going to note is the bottom of the beam. The
Thank you.
bottom of the beam is at 9 feet currently. At the current 17 feet overall height, the bottom of the beam's at 9 feet. And that was his requirement from the start with the pavilion I designed before this, and then when he found this and liked this design, and I redesigned a new one for him.
Could I actually see the plans or the elevation?
So he's doing that. You say this is already built but not installed.
Yeah, we're a timber frame company. So all of our structures are pre-built in my 5,000 square foot wood shop. And then this is a combination of traditional and modern timber framing. There's some mortise and tenon work, and there's some what we'll call metal mortise and tenon work, but all the pieces interlock together. So it's been built since June or July in my shop and packaged, ready to go. The only carpentry work we have to do on site is cut the bottoms of the post after we run laser elevations for the hardware mounts.
I have another copy if anyone wants.
Oh, yeah.
So when you say about, the sun coming in, is that why it's,
Yeah, so the structure
Pitch.
is 5 feet from the front of the pool.
okay,
You set some chairs right there where people like to be in and, get in when they get too hot. Having that height will allow you to enjoy the sun longer and earlier in the day.
okay. I think that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tamarkin. Just trying to think of a cogent way of asking this question. So there's nothing that you can, given what you said about this thing already being built, there's no way that you can make an adjustment to even get to that minor administrative approval. There's absolutely nothing that can be done here.
The only option is to cut basically the posts and make them shorter and reduce the beam height, which goes below his initial requirement. And that's, I guess, why I mentioned we're at 17 feet right now with a 9-foot beam clearance.
Right.
So of course, every foot we drop. but he would be at a 7-foot beam clearance if we went to the current zoning code. As far as bird's mouth notches on the rafters, if I reduce the slope of that roof, the distances laterally change, and the notches that are already in the wood would be visible and so forth. And it's already notched to its maximum third capacity of rafter depth for the bird's mouth.
Okay. That's the only question I had.
Ask another question.
Yep, Mr. Markin.
Mr. Blackford, it's fair to assume if somehow we got to 16 and a half foot where it was administrative approved, you still wouldn't be happy unless it was at 15.
We would be able to approve it,
Right.
which would be great for everybody. So, I mean, it doesn't technically meet code, but that was one of the big changes with the zoning code rewrite. It was to allow for those administrative variances in that. So we would definitely give it. I mean, it's not a, we would, but so it's 6 inches is kind of what we're discussing here.
Can I ask a question too?
Ms. Molly.
I just want to know, what would be the harm? I mean, is it really that detrimental for you to reduce that by 6 inches? So that we wouldn't have to be here?
I guess like the other guy, if I have to. I mean, having a structure that's 9 feet where versus 8.5, I don't know that.
Would that make what I'm asking, I know you said you wanted to be able to enjoy the sun longer. Would 6 inches prevent you from doing that?
It will for however long it takes the sun to move 6 inches. I don't know how long
Okay.
that would be. We did a lot of mapping with some of the things you can trace the sun path over your house to make sure, because I like to sit in the shade. I have a big umbrella out there, and I sit under there all the time. But my family and friends, they really like the sun, so
I get that.
I had to make sure that if I was putting this in, that I didn't take away their sun.
But you're not really taking away their sun, right? Like maybe you're reducing a tiny bit of it, but you're not necessarily like, it'll still be in the sun, correct? Like it's not gonna be, if you have to reduce it by 6 inches.
It's gonna take longer for the sun to come over to get
Okay.
sun.
Okay, but it's not like you're
Being higher,
shading
you get it
the whole
earlier.
area or
What's
something
that?
like, it's not like you'd be shading the entire area if you had to reduce it by 6 inches.
No, it's just
Okay,
the angle of the sun and how it
Okay.
travels across our house in the
Okay.
summer.
all right, thank you. I don't have anything else.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to follow up with that. So, looking at this and knowing a little bit about sun angles, perceiving the 17 feet at the highest peak is an architectural concern. Some places use the midpoint of the slope of the roof as the height, because the whole building really isn't 7 feet tall, it's just the highest peak. So looking at that, keeping that in mind with the solar, if I just reduce that overhang by a foot, I think your solar is still coming into play. You have all the look that you want. You're not reducing the height of the building. You're just reducing the overhang on the highest point back enough to meet that 16 and a half feet. And I think that's pretty attainable.
The roofs overlap intentionally,
Yeah,
so if you pull it back,
as they overlap, if you just nip that off 9 inches and move that back, that's an easy in-the-field cut in my mind, then that would also lower the overall down to that 16 foot 6 inches.
I don't know how far you have to pull it back to get 6 inches.
Yeah. So it doesn't look like it's a 12, is it a 412 pitch possibly? So I mean, you're pulling it back, would that be 8 inches?
Yeah,
That would be a foot.
Right now, I ran a guideline to 16
Yeah.
and a half feet, so I can tell you the rafter plumb cut would have to come back six and around 30 seconds, 7/16.
Consideration. Because it doesn't seem like that would affect the shadow line that you're trying to achieve with the sun. Actually, if the sun comes up on the other side, I would let the sun hit the pool a little quicker. Just looking for a fix without getting a variance. I have another comment when we're done later.
Certainly. Any other questions from the commission? Okay, seeing none, do we have a motion to approve I'm sorry. Do we have a motion to approve case V-0028-2024?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve item V-0028-2024.
We have a motion by Mr. Soriano. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Ms. Pollyea. Any discussion on the motion? Mr. Chapaka?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I made a comment that the overall height is 17 feet. It's 2 feet above, but if the city was going to accept the 16.6, I don't see the 17 feet being that big of a deal because it's not a major part of the building. It's just a very little portion at the highest peak. So visually, it's kind of irrelevant to me, so I'm in favor.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chapaka. Ms. Pollyea?
I mean, I would tend to agree with that as well. For me personally, I don't want to set precedents like that to grant variances for things that could otherwise be handled differently. I think that if there's a way you can go and get rid of 6 inches, that would be preferable. So that's just my point of view. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pollyea. Mr. Greenberg?
I'd agree with Ms. Pollyea, and we have code for a reason, and the city has indicated their position on this, so I will not be in favor.
Thank you, Mr. Greenberg. Mr. Soriano?
I don't know, maybe tonight I'm in agreement with Mr. Chapaka, we're on the same page tonight, but I think if the difference between standing in the street and looking at this thing is 6 inches to have it administratively approved, I don't think it's a big, I don't think you would be able to tell. I don't think 17 feet above, given that the 2-foot variance between 15 feet, it's already tall, 15 feet's pretty tall. So I don't think the 17 is going to be drastically different than the 15 feet. Understanding some of the difficulties and kind of sun placement and shading, I get all that as an architect. And I just don't think that the 6 inches of difference is going to be a notable difference between 17 feet and 16 and a half. So I'll be in favor.
Thank you, Mr. Soriano. Mr. Markin?
I'm going to agree with that line of thought. I think on this one, the fix isn't that difficult, but again, 6 inches isn't going to be noticeable, so I'll be in favor. It is prefabbed already.
Thank you, Mr. Markin. So once again, I'm going to be in agreement with the denial here, as Ms. Pollyea and Mr. Greenberg, I think, have pointed out, and the administration, that we had to be consistent here with the code, and I just would not like to set the precedent. So with that, I'm going to be voting no. So with that, clerk, please call the roll.
Soriano,
Yes?
Pollyea,
No.
Greenberg. No. Mako,
No.
Chapaka,
Yes.
Tamarkin.
Yes.
So once again, we have a tie vote, and because of that, the motion fails. Again, the two options, be in compliance, working with the city, or you can always request an appeal.
Are you able to come back with 7 people, so if there isn't a tie? Is that possible?
Mr. Roth?
I was going to say, can
I would
it,
say it's on the agenda tonight, and we are down a member, so we vote based on
would you have a quorum?
we have a quorum, and we do not have a majority of the quorum, so I think it fails the night it's on the agenda.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, our final case for the night is another variance case. It's V-0029-2024. To consider a variance application to vary section 111.03, requirements for permanent signage, the codified ordinances of the city of Gahanna, for property located at 1070 Tech Center Drive, parcel ID 025-013634, current zoning IM, Innovation and Manufacturing, Burns and Scala Roofing, Stephen Butzko, applicant. I'll recognize Mr. Blackford for a presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The project here tonight may look and sound a little familiar. Burns and Scala was before Planning Commission in March of this year. They're a roofing company, and they had about 40,000 square foot office, warehouse, building approved. It's under construction, as you stated, Mr. Chair. It's zoned IM, Innovation Manufacturing. Tonight, though, what are they here for? It's a variance request for 2 wall signs. So when they were before Planning Commission back in March, that was before the new zoning code was approved. So it was approved under the old code and old standards. One of the old standards was a 75-foot setback. And I think they show that on their plans here with the 2 sign locations. So the old code required the building to be set back, but the old code for signage is the same as that we have today. So whether they applied for a permit back in March or applied for a permit today, the code still had the same standard, which is 1 wall sign per frontage. Technically, this is only 1 front along Tech Center. So 1 wall sign at a maximum 50 square feet is what the code allows for. Again, that was back in March or today, even though there's different codes. They requested 2 wall signs, one 91 square feet and the other one 30 square feet. So again, code says 1 wall sign per frontage, maximum 50 square feet. So they're requesting 2. I think part of the reasoning that the applicant has provided is that the building is set back from the right-of-way of Tech Center, and with the slope and elevation change, it's tough to see. Again, there was the site plan, and I would just say, if we look at this for a second, so Tech Center is right here, so this is sort of the left-hand side of the screen. South is actually to the left. So this is Tech Center, and if anyone was at the Jeff Speck talk from last week over at Menlo and over by Edison, that's right over here. So that's just a little bit further to the left. So again, 2 signs is what they're requesting. Here's the elevations. Part of the discussion when the building was approved was allowing for the red as an accent color. That I believe that required a variance, and part of it was for the recognition and easy of recognizing this particular building. Variance criteria, it's the same as what we heard for the other requests. Is it substantial damage to the essential character of the neighborhood? Talking with this one over with staff, did recall that there was a similar variance granted, and that was for Edison, which again is just right across the road from this particular site. Edison had brewing. That facility is set back similarly from the roadway. They had 2 wall signs at a total of about 70 square feet. So approving this request wouldn't be totally out of character with other recent approvals in that area. However, there is some alternatives to another building wall sign. For example, the code allows for a ground sign at like 80 square feet, I believe. They don't have a ground sign. So an alternative to one of the wall signs would be to deny the request, and then they could get a ground sign as well. But staff, we don't support this request, but we're not objecting to it either. Again, it doesn't meet code, but it's not totally out of character if a sign variance were to be granted. And the other thing I would say is that Tech Center is only 25 miles an hour, and this is the only business on the north side of the road, so there's not a lot of distractions and competition for a roofing distributor and installer. But with that, staff, I turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Blackford. We'll now open the public comment. Would the applicant care to speak? Again, if you could state your name and address and speak directly into the microphone, that'd be great.
Name is Stephen Butzko. I reside at 112 West Cumberland Street, Hebron, Ohio, 43025. The main reasoning for filing for the variance is due to the way that Tech Center Drive is laid out and the position of the building on how it's set up on Tech Center. As you travel to the west on Tech Center Drive, the second sign comes into play due to the terrain of how Tech Center Drive, when you come down, forgive me as I remember the roadways through there. I believe it's Science Boulevard that comes up north, and then Tech Center goes down to the west. When you, just before that curve, or just as you hit that curve, traveling westbound, the Tech Center Drive begins to go down a hill. When you view that east elevation from that intersection of Tech Center Drive and Science Boulevard, where the entrance of the property would be to the business, a monument sign is not visible until you have already made that curve, whereas the wall sign would have been visible. I do have a couple of photos of the site. I don't know if we're able to see those.
I think this is what you're wanting as we
There
get-
it is.
Oops, let me go right here.
So this is the view. So this is a photo I took. This is a view east of Science Boulevard. You can just see, and I know it's kind of small, but the orange there, kind of just to the right of the school bus, is the building. The monument sign would be further down the hill and off to the left. So as you approach that intersection at Tech Center Drive from Science Boulevard, you're able to immediately identify the building. The photo that is next to that as well kind of shows it from the top of the hill so you can see on the far right. There is the building. The monument sign would be down where the Alfred trailer is, kind of centered where the mouse is there. Monument sign would be just a little bit further down the hill and located there. As for the front wall sign, when you're traveling eastbound, the more of the landscaping due to the forestry, as you come around the curve, they do have some of the forestry starting to strip out, but there's still some obstructions to the building itself. So we've requested to have the larger size, due to that and the setback from Tech Center Drive.
Okay. Thank you very much. So again, I don't believe we received any speaker slips, so I'll now close public comment and open it up to questions from the commission. Starting on my left, Mr. Shapaka.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Steve, you prepared for a 3-3 vote?
I'm prepared for what the board is willing to give.
So putting the extra sign on the building, you're foregoing any future monument sign considerations for it?
At this time, yes.
That's all I have, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shapaka. Ms. Pollier.
I mean, my question, I guess, would be, the reason for the variance is because of visibility, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, the building is red. So I guess my question is just, do you think that whether or not that sign is there or not would affect someone's ability to locate this property?
I cannot speak on how the visibility without the sign would be. I know the background when that design was when that design came up, I know they were using that with keeping in mind that they were looking to put a sign on that elevation as well.
Okay. And you came in, you got a variance for the color of the building. Correct.
Personally, I did not. That was the team who handled the
Sure.
building. I am a representative of the sign contractor.
But the property, I guess I should say. Okay. Okay. All right, I don't have any other questions. Thank you, though.
Thank you, Ms. Polly. Mr. Greenberg?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Greenberg. Mr. Serrano?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Serrano. Mr. Tamarkin?
I have two questions for the administration. So if we approve this variance, could they do a monument sign without a new variance?
Great
Because-
question. As it was talked
Yeah.
about, that would probably be, I guess, if there was going to be a motion to approve, I would probably recommend if that was a concern, that that should be a condition for limiting the monument sign or not allowing it. Otherwise, they could go in and, you know, get a permit, you know, tomorrow morning and build a monument sign without a condition.
Because it would still be allowed.
Yes, exactly. Yes, sir.
Okay, second question. One variance covers both two signs and the expanded square footage?
Yes, it covers both of those, yes. So it's for the additional square footage, again, because it's 50 square feet total, so they're at about 120 total, and for the additional sign. Yes, it covers both. Yes, sir.
That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Tamarkin. Just a few questions. So first, just to make sure I'm reading the application correctly, so what you're proposing to do is, with the signage, there would be the name of the company, the Burns and Scalo, and then the second sign would be the logo? Is that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, the front of the building, the south elevation would have the actual name of the facility, the Burns and Scalo, and then the east elevation would be just their logo.
Okay. And question for the administration. You had referenced the variance that Edison had gotten.
Yes, sir.
Could you explain or just kind of get us up to speed about what that involved? Is it similar to this, different?
Don't remember, and I didn't go into the particulars other than two signs and what the square footage was, but let me see here if I can just pull up a map here, a Google map, Street View. Real quick. Because I think if we look at it, it'll show. So I think this particular building is set back substantially more than Burns and Scalo, but I believe it was, and now, sorry, that probably didn't help, but I believe it was the Edison that we see right here and then the brewery right here. So it was those two signs there. And of course, they didn't have the red.
Okay. And another question that's pumped our minds, and we talked about just now about the monument sign, and not really going to put you on the spot, as I know you're the sign guy, but if we did put that condition on that, you know, we approve this variance and would preclude a monument sign, do you know, just kind of your, you know, given your role, do you think that the people you work for would have any issue with that?
I cannot answer that question. I do not know if they would have any objection to that requirement to a condition on the monument sign. Is that the condition not being able to have a monument sign at all?
Correct.
Okay. I'm not sure, to be completely honest with you. I do not know if they would be for or against that if it means the wall signs were to be approved, if the variance as proposed was to be approved.
Okay, fair enough. All right, that concludes my questions. So any additional questions from the commission?
Just have a clarification, Mr. Chair. So we're going to put a condition on this?
Potentially.
Okay.
Whoever makes the motion,
Yeah.
if they do
Put a
so.
condition on it. Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Polly?
I don't have any further questions. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Actually, I'm gonna make the motion, so I'm gonna just survey the members real quick. Are we for putting a condition on here? Got one yes,
What?
2 yeses, 3 yeses, all right, so we'll put the condition on. And all the condition says is if you wanted a monument sign, you have to come back for another variance. Doesn't preclude it, but you have to get permission.
Okay, so if the variance is
If this is approved,
approved as proposed tonight,
yeah.
the monument sign would not be allowed. We would have to again file another variance
For a monument sign.
For the monument sign. Would there be any potential possibility where the variance could still be approved as proposed, but the requirements for the monument sign are lessened? I know the requirements for the monument sign are 80 square feet with an 8-foot maximum height. Could we do something where the size limitation is dropped to somewhere around 40 square feet with a 6-foot maximum height? To where it still leaves a potential opportunity to use a monument sign should they want to do that in the future. I don't know if they would. But that way that option is still on the table, whereas coming back for a variance to kind of limit some of the time and costs invested into it. Would that be a possibility?
My kind of gut reaction would be that would have to be spelled out in any variance application that gets submitted for us to consider that. So so hypothetically, if you know, if it passes tonight as with the condition, and then let's say 5 years from now that you wanted to go ahead and put a monument sign, I think that that whatever you're proposing to do at that time would have to be part of that variance application that would go to the city and then come before us. I think that's how that would play out.
So the condition would be no monument sign allowed at this time, but if they did decide to come back for a variance for the monument sign, we would add that as a condition, whereas the condition was applied tonight.
I wouldn't say it would be so much of a condition, but it would be part of the variance application that you'd be asking for.
Okay.
So I don't want to say we'd be kicking the can down the road, but in effect, we would if we get to that point.
Okay.
But I think it does kind of leave the door open for the company, if they really want that monument sign, that they can always come to us for a variance, but you just have to spell out exactly what you want.
Okay.
Okay.
And with that, Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion for the approval with the condition of V-0029-2024, with the condition that this approval of this variance will have the condition that a monument sign will not be approved without an additional variance.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Tamarkin. Do I have a second?
Second, Greenberg.
I have a second by Mr. Greenberg. Any discussion? Mr. Baca? Ms. Polly? No. Mr. Greenberg?
No, sir.
Mr. Hanna? Mr. Markin?
Good.
Okay, and I do not. So clerk, please call the roll.
Tamarkin,
Yes.
Greenberg,
Yes.
Pollyea,
Yes.
Shapaka,
Yes.
Suriano,
Yes.
Mako.
Yes, motion passes. Okay, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you guys very much.
Okay, next agenda item, any unfinished business? Seeing none, new business. Official reports, Assistant City Attorney,
Nothing to report at this time.
thank you. Director of Planning,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next meeting, I think we only have one item, and shockingly, it's a variance. So just one item for our next meeting, I believe, at this point.
okay. Thank you. Council Liaison,
Yes, budget season, so that's the primary topic that's ongoing. Can hope to have a vote from council next month. The zoning code changes that Planning Commission just saw and approved, I believe at our last meeting, those are going to City Council, I believe, on Tuesday for a first discussion, and if all goes well, I believe it would be early December it gets approved, so basically it would be in effect for the start of next year. So that would be great, and that concludes my comments. Thank you.
okay, thank you. I do not see Madam Mayor here, and I do not have any official actions or any correspondence.
No, sir.
Okay, poll members for comment. Mr. Chapaka.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd like to have everybody keep John Hicks in mind for thoughts and prayers, that he get better and join us again.
Thank you, Mr. Peckham. Ms. Polly?
I will just echo that. No other comments.
Mr. Greenberg?
Echo that, no other comments.
Mrs. Triano?
No, wish the best for Mr. Hicks.
Mr. Markin?
No comments?
Yep, so my quick comment is I was fortunate enough to attend the Morpsey Sustainability Conference last week and was joined by a very strong contingent from the city, and it was good to see some folks. Yep, 2 tables. Yep.
Oh, we're all there. Wow.
Yep. And, yeah, it was a very, very enjoyable conference, and I think they said they had close to 700 people, so wonderful conference. And again, just want to, again, give Mr. Hicks my best sentiments and hope he gets well. So with that, motion to adjourn?
So moved.